Imagine being addicted to learning. Yeah. If you're going to have an addiction to something, why not have an addiction to learning? Now, you may think this is going to sound a little bit crazy, but over our life, we form certain addictions. Addictions to certain behaviours, addictions to certain habits. And as we get older, what happens is people start to get addicted to being comfortable. People start to choose the comfort choice, the comfort habit, over the more difficult habit, more rewarding habit. Because our brain is seeking dopamine. Dopamine is a chemical that excites the brain. And so the brain needs dopamine, it's searching for it, it needs to feel good about itself. And usually what happens, it's the anticipation of the reward more than the actual event. It's the anticipation that creates the cheap dopamine. So when people eat junk food, for example, it's the anticipation of me eating McDonald's that causes 90% of that dopamine in my brain to get excited. Because notice it, the brain is so excited now because you've got a thought to eat, say, for example, McDonald's, okay? So you're driving and you see the big sign of McDonald's and you see the big burgers at the front and the pictures and you think, oh my God, wow. Now that anticipation in your head has now given you a dopamine boost. The brain's getting excited. And so then the reward has already been given. You've already got the reward. Now you go and action it. And then you have your Big Macs and your cheeseburgers and all that stuff. The thing is this, notice what happens when you have junk food after half an hour. You start feeling guilty. You don't feel as good. You don't feel as well. We know it's not good for our body. And so there's a decline. And that's when depression and anxiety kicks in, because the reward now was for the anticipation of junk food was really, really high. And then the aftermath of having that junk food is really, really low. The reward hasn't really been matched. And so this is when depression kicks in. And notice, alcohol, drugs, pornography, all these things do exactly the same thing. It's the anticipation that gives you the dopamine influx, the dopamine fix. And the aftermath is like, oh, well, was that it? And you start to feel guilty, you start to feel anxiety, you start to feel depressed. And that's why all these things never have a long-term effect on things like depression, on things like your mind, and why you form lifelong habits. Social media is a classic example, because what happens is social media is probably worse than all of them, because you're in a job that is not giving you a lot of dopamine. The only dopamine hit most people get from a job is they'll get a pay at the end of the week, which allows them to pay for the bills and gives them some money to enjoy some freedom on the weekend. And that's why everyone loves Fridays. Because Fridays, the reason why Friday most people have alcohol and junk food is because it's the anticipation of the whole weekend that's giving us a dopamine fix. So that dopamine fix is the anticipation that we're free to do whatever we want on the weekend. We've got a whole weekend in front of us because it's Friday evening. And so we're excited. And so what do most people do? Alcohol and junk food. Alcohol and junk food, the consumption, and the data doesn't lie, of alcohol and junk food on a Friday, especially Friday evening, is huge. It's really high. And so So this is what happens. We form habits. And this becomes a habit, it becomes a lifelong habit. And then what happens is this, social media. Social media becomes something of a comfort. So we've had alcohol, we've had junk food. We need now some kind of entertainment to reach or to create a new dopamine. And so what does social media do? It feeds us with some kind of dopamine, and what does it do? It's always negative, it's always got drama, it's always something there that's telling you some kind of story that forms some kind of anger and jealousy and envy. So 99% of this is damaging the brain. 99% of social media, if it's not deliberate, and this is the key here, when you're going into social media, when I'm going into social media and I'm going deliberately to seek deliberate information for something that I'm learning, for something that I want to grow in, for people I might want to connect with, for work-related stuff. So it's very deliberate. I manage social media. I control it. What happens for most is that social media takes over you and it starts controlling you and it starts managing you and it becomes an addiction. Now, imagine this. Imagine this. Imagine you can become addicted to learning. Imagine you can become addicted. This is a new way of learning. This is a revolutionary way of learning. Imagine you can become addicted. Imagine the anticipation of wanting to learn gives you such a high dopamine. So you're anticipating wanting to learn, and that gives you such a high dopamine. And then you actually start to do the action. And when you start to do the action, it gives you even a higher dopamine. That's expensive dopamine. So becoming addicted to learning, and that stems from the initial hit, the initial reward, the anticipation. And then when you actually do it, that creates an even higher reward. So when you get a higher reward from the anticipation, that's when the brain's going up. So let's assume for the sake of this exercise, I'm getting really, really excited because of the anticipation of what I'm going to learn today as a deep learner. So I'm getting a dopamine hit, which means now I'm gonna start reading these books and start doing these practices and start actioning these problems towards my ecstatic desire, because that's what deep learners do, solve problems towards an ecstatic desire. But because when I start to action that, the reward, the dopamine hit is even higher than the anticipation. And so when the actual action is higher than the anticipation of the action, your brain grows and you're in genius territory. And if you form a habit in that, not only are you changing your life, not only are you changing people around you, you're on the way to changing the world. You're growing and developing and adding value. It doesn't matter what age you're at, you're growing and developing and adding value. When you anticipate, every decision that you make right now is due to an anticipation of some kind of dopamine, a reward that you're going to get. But then when you action it, when you action that anticipation, if that reward gives you lower dopamine in the actual anticipation, then your brain's going downwards. It's a simple mathematical formula.